Thanks very much, everyone, for coming out tonight. It's fantastic to have such a massive turnout, actually, for an event like this. We've had the joy of spending the whole week together, spending time in München, talking to a lot of companies down there, some of the largest companies in Germany, and Hamburg again today. There's companies in Germany that want to change the way they work, that want to respond to their customer needs faster, because they realize they need to change. And what we'll talk about tonight is a pathway, a roadmap, the things that these large organizations are starting to do to ensure their survival, not for today, not for tomorrow, but for the day after that. Now, as we're going through this talk, we love to get feedback. We love to hear what you think. So please, if you are interested, you hear something interesting, tweet about it. Tell the world about it. Don't be afraid to share, as we have a live feed here on Periscope to people all over the world right now, tuning in to listen to this talk, which is fantastic. So before I start to talk about lean enterprise, I think it's important to explain just actually what some of these terms mean. And the first one I like to start with is lean. Now, if you go to Japan and walk up to someone in Toyota and start talking about lean, they will have no idea what you're talking about. Lean isn't actually a word that even exists in Japanese culture. People within Toyota understand that they're working under the Toyota production system. That's what they refer to it as. And lean was a word that was really coined by these two people, Womack and Jones. So when the Americans saw that they were being outperformed, outcompeted, they went out to Japan. They wanted to understand what were the Japanese doing that gave them these radical improvements, these huge leaps forward in their productivity and quality and customer satisfaction. And they spent time understanding what the team were doing over there. They observed them. And these were the principles that they tried to use to describe what the Toyota production system was about. And it talks about precisely specifying value for a specific product, understanding what the value of what you're trying to create is about. They said, identify the value stream for each product. So from the moment you have an idea until it gets in front of your customer and they give you feedback, what are all the components that happen along there? What is that stream? And how does it flow? How does information flow, the product flow, from someone's idea until it gets in the hands of the customer? Customers pull value from the producer. Now, this is very interesting. So when Toyota make cars, they wait till the customer comes to them and says, I would like a car. And then it takes them 3 days to create that car based on the specifications that the customer requested. They're waiting for customers to come to them and pull what they want. That triggers the system. Traditionally, though, in manufacturing, what we had seen is somebody would build a product, build millions of them, and then have to spend all the money on resources on building it. Then you have to hire a marketing team, then you have to hire a sales team, and you have to push your product onto the market. You have to tell people to buy our product. And so you can see the amount of investment it requires. Where a customer wants something, think about a product you love. You want to get it. You want to get that product when it comes out. You go and get it, as opposed to being a product pushed onto you. So that's the difference between push and pull systems. And constantly pursue perfection. And this is the idea of continuous improvement. Everyone who works in Toyota is constantly walking into their job and thinking, how can I make this better? How can I improve this process? How can I improve this car? How can I improve what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? Working with their managers to do that. And that is the goal of continuous improvement. So this is what we meant when we started off and decided to talk about lean, the principles of lean and how the Americans captured it. The second is enterprise. Now, the reason we chose enterprise is for this and the description. We talk about a complex adaptive system unified by a common purpose. Now, organizations are very large. There's a lot of people in them. You think about this room, there's a lot of people in this room. We all interact with each other differently. We've all shared information maybe when we walked in the room. The quality of information and how well it flows around your organization improves your ability to make decisions, but it also to understand that they have impacts on each other. And this is the realm of systems thinking. Now, the thing that brings large groups together, a unifying force, is always purpose. What's the purpose of the organization? Who in here knows the purpose of their organization? Don't be shy. I think I've seen 3 hands go up. All right? How much does that purpose resonate with you? Does that make you want to go to work tomorrow? The purpose that your organization is trying to achieve? So it's a really powerful point to think about. And this is why we chose the word lean enterprise, because it's about pursuing those principles, but understanding that organizations are complex adaptive systems, but they're unified under a common purpose. So that all sounds great, right? Really nice. But this is where we are today. Most of your organizations are living in a 21st century world with 20th century management practices and 19th century principles. We're still using the same accounting practices from the 19th century. Now, last time I checked, the pace of the world picked up a little bit from the 19th century than it has today. And yet we still persist with the same methods and techniques that we were using in the 19th century. So the former CEO of GE, Jack Welch, said, if the pace of change outside your organization is faster than the pace of change inside your organization, you're already dead. You cannot respond to change if you cannot move at the same pace at which change moves. So when you're trapped in a world like this, where you're still held onto command and control, organization structures that were designed in the 19th century, when one person had education and other people had little education, you're dead. You've no choice. You may as well pack up the bags and move on. And we have data of this now. The State of DevOps report in 2014 and 15 surveyed 9,200 companies to understand what are the correlation and causation between high-performance organizations. And these are the findings. And these are facts. So in the best ability we have now to define facts in a scientific manner, i.e. statistically studying a cohort or number of people, these are facts. So high-performing IT organizations are twice as likely to exceed their profitability, market share, and productivity. That is a fact. High-performance IT have 60 times fewer failures, can recover in 160 times faster, and deploy 30 times more frequently in shorter lead times. They work in small batches. They don't have one release every 6 months. They have a release every week. They work hard to make it economical to work in small batches of work, continuous frequent changes, pushed to production, and tested with your customers. Lean management and continuous delivery lead to better delivery and more sustainability within the team. No matter what your apps are, greenfield, brownfield, or legacy, it has no impact on your ability to adopt these practices. How many people have sat in a room and said, oh, it's easy for that team, they're building something new. It's easy to do this stuff when you're doing something new. Well, that's a lie. So deal with it. And quite importantly, IT managers play a massive role in creating diversity in the team, and diverse teams have higher performance. Because this is what you're up against. These are the new upstarts. These are the companies that are unbundling your business, that are slowly eroding the edges of your business model and taking all your customers. I love putting this slide on because half the room's head starts going like this. It's like we're on a boat and the whole thing's just starting to... I've promised next time I'll flip the slide around and make it go the other way, but I kind of enjoy watching everyone go. Right, and just to call some companies out here, right, that people will be very familiar with, I'm sure. Spotify, Square, Dropbox, SpaceX, Uber. Right? These are companies that are fundamentally separating you from your customer. They're creating services that your customer uses and turning you into dumb infrastructure. Think about Uber. They own no cars. Actually, what do they own? They own an app, and they own a customer. They provide services to those people, and they turn all the infrastructure into dumb cars. They just deliver things. Think about WhatsApp. You use that to message, and it turns telecommunications into dumb pipes. They are squeezing your market. They are fundamentally changing the way you do. I've spent the last 3 weeks with some of the largest financial organizations in the world, and they are scared to death about what fintech means because they understand that they're taking their business apart. Why do you have a bank account? Anyone?
To easily pay people.
And you could do that in PayPal. So why do you have a bank account?
Receive the salary.
And you can get that paid into PayPal. Why do you have a bank account? This is what you're up against. The world is changing. You're trapped in legacy mindsets because we've always done it that way. That's the way it's always been. Why would we change? It's always been like that. Remember that as we go forward. Because this is the important in organizations when you start to think about these things. You need to start understanding that it's not just about technology or about business. It's about collaboration between both. Who works in a technology group here? Who talks about the scary business? Those people that come over and throw requirements at you? Yeah? They're crazy, aren't they? Okay, hands up technologists. Come on, put them up. How many of you know how to read a company balance sheet? So this is about you also understanding what business is about. You can't give out to them if they won't let you use a NoSQL database if you can't talk to them about how you operationally run a business. You need to meet people halfway. It's not one side or the other. We're all in business now, and technology provides an opportunity to drive innovation in business. It's not mutually exclusive. So when we studied what was going on in high-performance organizations during the book and the clients and the 3,000 thought workers out there all telling us what the right answer is, these are the things we came up with. Companies that see technology as a strategic capability achieve high performance. Companies that support a willingness to experiment. When you're working in a complex domain, the only way, the best way we know as humans to build knowledge is to run experiments, is to follow the scientific method, to learn how to adapt based on changing circumstances. And you need to work in iterative and adaptive working practices to allow that happen. If your experiment takes 4 years, that's how long it takes you to learn something. If your experiment takes a week, you can learn faster than someone who's learning every 4 years. If you're releasing software every 6 months, you can learn every 6 months. If you release it every week, you're learning 50, 30, 25 times faster than your competition. That's what drives high performance. But also reducing learning anxiety across the organization. And this is what we mean by people are afraid to try new things. If you are in a culture where you are punished for trying something and it doesn't work, you will not try anything. You will freeze. The role of organizations is to reduce learning anxiety, to make it safe for people to try and experiment. If you want to experiment, though, you need to take accountability for that. You can't just do any experiment. You create a safe-to-fail experiment. We'll talk about that. And finally, then, it's about the ability to innovate at scale. And scale doesn't mean one team works in this way, and they seem to be improving. Everyone is going to work in exactly the same way as that team because they have high performance. You do not scale practices. You scale learning. what teams are doing and helping them be successful. You get them to share that learning and then spread that out across the organization so people can learn and figure out what's best in their context based on stories they've heard from other people. That is how we have always learned. That's how you scale out. So Laura and I are going to talk about 3 key aspects that you need to address in your organization to start to achieve high performance at scale and become a lean enterprise. And the first is to do this: create a culture of experimentation.
Culture of experimentation sounds like a really cool thing, but what do we mean by that? I mean, culture is almost an overused word. We are always talking about the culture that needs to change. I would like to start with a little story to show what we mean by that culture. A while ago in California, there used to be a car manufacturing plant from General Motors, and it was the worst they ever had. Like, they were producing really bad quality. The people were incredibly unhappy. 20% of the staff never showed up for work. Apparently, there were alcohol and drugs on the line. So it must have been really bad. And it ended with General Motors actually having to close that plant down. At the same time, Toyota was trying to come into the US market and therefore needed to produce within the US. And they were trying to get that plant to do that there. And they were trying for a joint venture with General Motors. And the workers' union stood up and said, if you want to do that with that plant, you have to rehire all the people. You are doing it with our people. Every single one of them. And Toyota went, fine, we'll do that. So what they did, they took all those people over to Toyota City and taught them the Toyota way of building cars. They came back, started working in that plant in California, and something worked. Because 3 months later, it was the most successful plant they had. Amazing quality, motivated, happy workforce. Only 2% of them ever calling in sick. So it was a success story. Almost sounds a bit like a fairy tale. But what did really happen there? The key for me is really that it was about the behavior that changed. Like, often if we're looking at culture, we're looking from down here. We're talking about culture and that we have values that build on top of our culture and that then behavior expresses our culture. But what Shuk is saying, who was very involved in that story I was just talking about, is what he saw is we first change our behavior, and through seeing that different behavior, the culture starts to change. And if you're looking at that example of that plant, it's 2 key things that were different in the Toyota way of working, and that's what they saw and what happened and what created the whole change. There is this famous Andon cord that the workers on the line can pull, and then it stops the line. So whenever they encounter a problem or they're seeing something come up, they can pull that cord and it stops the line. What that does is it gives them control over their work. They're not trapped there going through the motions and seeing that things are going terribly wrong. So that is what changes for the workers. But the other thing that then happens when they pull that cord is that their manager is coming over, and the only task of that manager in that moment is trying to help that person to solve that problem and find a better way of doing it, so it can't happen again. And what that does, it changes what a manager is supposed to do. Like traditionally in all the companies we know, a manager was meant to sort out the work and then tell people what to do. And in that moment, the perception changes because the manager has a different task. And that changes the work of the worker again. So here it's a really great example how the behavior created the change and not the other way around. The second amazing point for me in that story is they did it with the same people. Something we hear a lot, especially in the IT industry, is there's not enough talent. We can't find the people we are looking for. But they did it with the same people. They did not hire a single new person. So apparently the people could do it. What typically happens in our industry, there's a craze for some type of people. We go there and we're like, we need green. Whatever green is this year. A couple of years ago it was data analysts, might be DevOps, whatever the craze is at the moment. And then we all go out and try to find these people, like people with 5 years experience in something that only has existed for a year. And we hunt, and it's expensive, and it's annoying, and we can't find anybody. And then finally find somebody, and the next thing happens. That's working very well here. And then the next thing happens, and we suddenly need blue. Whatever the next big thing is, it's not green anymore, it's blue. So we start all over again. Go hunting, go searching, won't find anybody, it's expensive. What is wrong with these slides? So, what if your people could be blue, could be green and learn blue, or actually learn anything you want them to learn? And that's the whole idea of that learning culture and that culture of experimentation, that the people actually can develop in that direction and learn something new. And the important thing about that is to create an environment where they're not scared to learn something new. Like DevOps is like a perfect example. We often come in there and trying to change towards DevOps. And what does it do in the first place? The operations people are being scared that they're going to lose their job. So you want to create an atmosphere there where change does not mean I'm losing my job, where change means I'm going to find something new and exciting to do. So that's for me the two key elements where you want to go. But now you're probably asking, how am I going to get there? That's what it typically looks like when we're starting to try and do a change. Like, you have business as usual, it's not going quite well. You run a change program, and you do it all over again. And that graphic already assumes that the change program actually did work, which is not always the case. So what could a different way of doing that be? I want to introduce you to the improvement kata. You know a kata from like sports, especially martial arts, and it's a thing where you go through like certain motions and do them so often until they are ingrained and you don't have to think about them anymore when you do them. And that is what we were trying to do here as well. We want to create the idea of learning and how to handle a problem and how to learn from it so it's ingrained. So whenever you encounter a problem, that's what you do. So what is the kata like? You start with looking at where you actually want to go. You're looking for the direction of change. What's your challenge? Where do you want to be? Then you look at your current situation. Where am I right now? And then you're looking for the next step. You're not looking to how to get to that goal. You're looking for the first baby step you can take. And then you try to start and iterate towards it. You experiment. And then you end up with something that looks like that, where you go from where you are today to your desired target, which then becomes your today, and so on. And it's going to be a line like that. It's not going to be straight up. Because right here you're experimenting, you're trying things, and they might not work at times. And that's okay, because the only thing you do then is look what happened and try a new thing. So if you want to do something like that and set up a kata like that and an improvement process, there are different areas where you can start. You can either start at the individual or at the team level and look at the team and look at the situation of the team and try to improve something there. Or you can have a global approach and look at your whole company, look at all areas. And I want to talk a little bit about both. What's pretty interesting to look at if you're looking at individual or team level is the different motivations. There are different studies about motivations, but I'm finding what Daniel H. Pink has done in Drive most helpful, because he's talking about those three big ones. And that's something to keep in mind that actually works in a lot of situations. He's talking about autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Autonomy is the degree how much I can organize my own work. It's not only the autonomy that I myself can decide what I do, but it's mainly about how I do my work. That's if you're looking at the Toyota example, that I can stop the line and change the way I do the job. That's pretty interesting to look at if you're looking at a team. How much autonomy does a team have to organize its own work? The other thing is purpose. Purposes can be like that big thing, like why does a company exist? Why am I showing up for work in the morning? But if you're looking at a team level, it can be much smaller than that, looking at the individual task. Does everybody know why he's doing that little thing he's doing right now and how it contributes to the big picture? And that's something that just motivates us as a human to understand why we are doing things. And then there's mastery. Mastery is just the urge to get better at things. It makes us proud if we're good at something. Mastery, if you think about it, you're usually thinking about the world-class piano player who has been practicing for 20 years. But mastery starts so much earlier. If you're thinking about our green and blue example, if you're doing your first little step in blue, that feels like mastery to you, because for you it's new, and you just learned a new skill. And that can be very highly motivating within a team as well. Or you take a global approach and look at the whole thing. Don't try to read it, I'll zoom in a second. But the idea I wanted to show you here is just to create a radar and look at all different areas. So here they looked at the people, at the tools, at the processes, at platform technology. And then you go from the inside out. Here's like now, and then it's a month, 3 months, 6 months out. What that does is like you can put it up on a wall and everybody knows where you want to go and what changes you want to make. It makes it visible. Examples in here, for example, can be like in the platform technologies, there are things like acceptance, test-driven development, or feature toggles. Or if you're looking at the people level, it can be we need full-time product owners to go the next step. Or it can be like highly complex, like an agile governance model. So you can have things on a different level in there, but it gives you like a bit of a landscape and everybody can see where everybody's heading. So if you're doing a change in a big organization, it's very helpful to have something like that up on the wall. So now we've talked a little bit about like the culture that's helpful, that type of process, and now Barry's going to talk a little bit about the organizational design you need for that.
So the reason we use the word design is because you can actually design your organization. It's not fixed. We've chosen the structure that we've chosen for a reason. We've chose to live in the 19th century still. People still have the same structures from the 19th century. The economists have this great statement about how businesses can survive and thrive in turbulent times. Yet the main obstacles to improved business responsiveness are slow decision-making, conflicting departmental goals and priorities, risk-averse cultures, and silo-based information. Who works in a company like that? Only 2 people. Wow. I better pack. We should go home. This is amazing, right? And this is the sort of challenges we have. We design the company in a way that is counterintuitive to being successful. Simple example. We measure developers on how many stories they finish. We measure testers on how many bugs they find. We measure operations on how long the system is up. They're all conflicting goals. Developers trying to push things at QAs. Just pass it. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Operations, just deploy it, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I'm not deploying that code. It's going to fall. It's going to hit my KPI. I'm not going to get my bonus. Fail. Because we're still living in the 19th century. And this made sense in the 19th century. Don't get me wrong. You had people at the top who were properly educated. Very few of the workforce at that time were. They had knowledge. They probably had a sense for the level of complexity of the work of what might be a good way to go. That was the 19th century. We're in the 21st century. The rise of the knowledge worker, educated people. Context is impossible for one person in the whole organization to hold in their head. Yet we still use the same organizational design, management practices from the 20th century to do this. Someone at the top comes up with an idea, a strategy, about how they want something to be performed. And then they have a load of people in the middle to make sure that the people do what they say. They drive alignment. They manage them. And then they push that execution of their strategy down to the people down the bottom, who are not only asked to do work that they have no context of the purpose of, but also they're accountable for a target or a budget. And just to make sure, in case the managers don't do their job and keep those people into line, we'll come up with another thing. We'll invent key performance indicators, or KPIs. And we will hand those KPIs to those people to ensure they behave in a certain way as well. So we'll design a system that they have no input to control them. And that essentially gives us micromanagement, a system that actually fulfills itself. And this is madness, because the world is not like that anymore. We're in a world where the coder understands as much, in some instances, of what the business is about as the person who runs it. They may even know more. It's impossible for the people who run the business to know all the challenges about developing a piece of code or releasing software. You have to start to trust your people. They are educated, they are smart, they know what they're doing. But it's tough in the role of a CEO or CFO because this is what your life is like every morning. You walk in and someone goes, I've got an idea. I need money. Or you've your project teams. Well, we're actually doing work. I need money. Or the operations team going, none of this stuff works. I need money. So where do you spend? Where's the problem? What do you do? And to help this process more effectively, what do we do? How do we manage funding? Well, once a year, we spend 3 months getting everyone to get their PowerPoint decks together, practice their pitches, try and say, I deserve the money. Last year I got 10 million, so I better ask for 15 because I'll probably get 5. Oh, yeah. And we're trapped in this loop, right, where enterprises are just constantly planning stuff and doing stuff. Plan, do. Plan, execute. Plan, get stuff done. And they do this for most of the year. You just keep trying to execute to that plan. And then at the end of the year, you probably don't even talk about what happened at the plan because it was a tough year. There were some strange things happened, total outliers, can't believe it. But I've got a new plan. I want to talk about the new plan, not the old plan. Because the new plan, we've planned harder this year. We've planned a little more. This plan's going to work. Lean enterprises, high-performance organizations are constantly evaluating their plan. They're planning, they're doing, they're checking, and then they're taking action based on the outcome of what they're learning from performing that plan. If you do annual budgeting cycles, you do this loop once a year. High-performance organizations do it many times. Actually, their goal is to try and get to it real time, as that's the kind of level that you're thinking about. Software delivery teams, like at Amazon, that deploy software 1,079 times in an hour, go through this loop 1,079 times in an hour to find out what their customers want. Does the technology work? Can I deploy it? Oh, and they were doing that in 2011. So I don't even know how fast they're going now. That's how fast they're learning. And this is the thing, like, we cannot let these budgeting processes, these big waterfall, long feedback cycles run the way you make decisions. You are going to make poor decisions because the information you have is poor. The system is poor. It's poorly designed. It's not designed to respond to change. And like, this is the whole way the budget thing plays, right? You have your 3 characters. There's the budget plan. Someone was on time, on budget, and delivered all their features last year. So they hit all their KPIs. Well done. So you're going to get more money this year. And someone sort of didn't, so they'll get the same. And poor operations, they only got 95% uptime, so they're not going to get extra money this year. They're going to have to work harder. And so the game begins. So the person who got the money is like, I'm going to build all my pet projects. And then the person who didn't get any, no change, are like, well, I've got stuff to get done if I want to hit my KPIs. So I'm going to stop doing work that helps the operations team. I'm going to locally optimize what's good for me and make me happy. And those operations people, well, they can just deal with that. But the operations people have no money now. They've less money than last year. And they've 3 times the amount of features being thrown at them. Because if I deliver features, I hit my KPI, got my scope, got it on time. So the game continues. Who wins in this? Who's winning? Is the business winning? Is your customers winning? Is the startup winning? You're going out of business, and fast. You're spending time on the wrong things. You're not delivering value to your customers. You're not spending time on improving your business. You're spending time on playing bureaucracy games. And this is the challenge, right? We're even constructed, again, in the same way. Projects are the root of all evil. They are ridiculous. They were, again, another byproduct of the 19th century. People have great ideas. So what are you going to do? Let's just spin up a project. How long does it take to spin up a project? After you've done your PowerPoint, your business case, your planning, your write the requirements, a guy, Don Ronerstein, wrote Principles of Product Development Flow, and he has research to prove that 50% of your time is spent in the planning phase, just coming up with the ideas. 50% of your time. Startups have already released a product, by the way. And yet you wonder why you're losing ground. It's crazy. So then the people, they get the money finally in the project because in order for a project to stay alive, they have to deliver features, right? Just have to keep delivering things. Until, if you want to get more money, just keep delivering things. Actually, I want to make sure I stay in a job, so I just better keep delivering things. Better never find out if anyone uses them. I'm just going to keep delivering things. And then we have these great stats like only, 30% of an application is really used. Guess why? Because projects are designed to just deliver things. Don't ever ask if anyone uses it. It's the wrong question if you have projects. And then operations just getting stuff thrown on them, thrown on them, thrown on them, thrown on them, thrown on them. Oh, and then the project finishes, right? So they run out of money. And then 2 years later, the question is, hey, does anyone know how to use this app? Anyone? Where's the what? Half of them, they've left? All right. Oh, what? They're on something. All right, okay. I can get 5% of their time every 2 months? All right, what? So does anyone know how to run this? Are they here? Oh, right. Ta-da! This is how you have designed your your organization. But you expect high performance. What a joke. And this is why we really advocate for our clients now to really start thinking about how they can start to build cross-functional, small, multidisciplinary teams that are essentially like mini businesses, that they are building little products, that they are customer-facing, that they can experiment, they can deploy their own software and test it with their customers to find out if they use it or not. CFOs love this because they can run each one of these like a little P&L. They understand how much it costs to make an investment in that team to build things. That team can respond and say, actually, our product is making money, or it's not. Or maybe that's okay. What do you think about that? They're small, manageable investments. Delivery teams can talk to their customers for once. They're not hidden down in the bowels of an organization. Operations teams, customers, are delivery teams. How can they make delivery teams happy? By providing them a platform to deliver products to their customers. So this is the model that a lot of organizations chase now. This is when you look at your Spotifys, when you look at your Amazons, when you look at your Netflix, you can pick any company in the world that are trying to get to this model because they know it ties to outcomes. People doing the work can tie to what they're achieving and start to adapt at speed. So this is why when someone walks in and says we should have a cross-functional, multidisciplinary team, a small team, and let them build and release their own software, you build it, you run it, this is why they want to do it. So they can get connected to their customers and move fast at speed. So moving fast is important, but that's why lean product development is good. You might design these as small teams, but what are they actually doing to make sure they achieve great outcomes?
If it comes to lean product development, I actually like to start with talking about hamburgers for a little while. 75 hamburgers each second, that's what McDonald's is throwing out there. So 75 every second. That's their output. That's what they can throw out there. But that's not the outcome. That's not the reason why they are doing it. They are doing it to make the money. And to keep that difference between outcome and output in mind is one of the key things to do like good lean product development. You want to know that everything you do is connected to the outcome. There's a very interesting tool by Gojko Acic that can help you to make that connection. It's called an impact map. And the impact map starts with a why. Like the first thing you want to think about is, like, what is the outcome I'm aiming for? What is the impact I want to make? And that, if you're a company, is probably something that's connected directly to money. So let's take, for an example, I want to increase my customer segment A by 10%. That's a very nice goal. You know why you're doing things? It's connected to money, and you can measure it. I can pretty clearly tell you if you reached that goal or if you did not. Then you're looking at the who. Who can help you to reach that goal? And here you want to look internally and externally. So if you're looking externally, you're of course looking at that customer segment A. But who else out there can help you to achieve that goal? What about other customers? Are they somehow influencing those customers? What about media? The idea of that whole impact map is to go as wide as possible with your ideas. You want to come up with a whole lot of ideas what you could possibly do to make sure you're not going down the wrong road. And you can look internally. Who internally is helping you to achieve that goal? If you're looking to increase a customer segment, sales probably can help. But also marketing, or the product teams, or the IT, or customer service. Who else? Like really go wide and think about everybody so somehow related to that group. The next question you're asking yourself is how? What does that person or that group of people need to do to get us closer to that goal? And only then, in the fourth step, you're asking what? Like, what do I have to do to help them to do that how? What do I have to build? That is only the level where you're coming up with those feature lists we are typically talking a lot about in product development. Only now it's feature level. Beforehand, it's just asking like who and how. And that is the last step. But what that gives you is like that whole long list of what's is connected to the outcome. You know why you thought that is connected to your outcome and why you're doing it. But what is important to keep in mind, I just said the word feature list, but really what you are having on that list is just assumptions. You have no idea if that's going to work. Right now it's just a hypothesis. And if you're looking at statistics, Ronnie provided like a lot of research at Amazon and Microsoft, like running millions of A/B tests and coming up with that metric, saying 60 to 90% of everything, now the microphone is gone, 60 to 90% of everything we put out there is not influencing the metric why we put it out there. So even if you take the most optimistic number, that means like out of your long list, 6 out of 10 things are for the bin. So what you really have is not a list of features, it's a list of sentences like that. We believe building the thing for these people will achieve this outcome. We will know we are successful when we see that signal from the market. There are 3 things in that sentence I love. One is the little word believe. We do know nothing at that point. We have the word outcome again, so we know why we are doing it and why we are thinking it's connected. And here we have the signal from the market. That's the thing I want to measure to figure out am I going down the right path. So what I do with these things, I'm trying to send it into like an experimentation loop and try to find out if it's a good idea to do it. I want to do that with as small invest as possible. I don't want to build a big thing. I don't want to code. Coding is expensive. So I have my cross-functional team who has come up with the idea. Ideally, that's the point where I already start talking to the customer. Like all those ideas have assumption under it. And sometimes just talking to a customer throws out half of the ideas because I was assuming a customer is doing a certain thing and they just don't do it, for example. So if I've narrowed that down, I want to create an experiment. If you're creating experiments, think about how you can test as cheap as possible. Our instinct is always just to go and code and build something, but try to think that making coding like your last possible option. How can you do it even easier? But what you want to achieve here is something you can put out in front of the customer. At that point, you're not asking and talking anymore. You want to see a reaction. You want to see a customer using it or reacting to it or doing something with it. Because what you want in the end is a clear decision to stop doing that because nothing happened, to maybe having to change that idea and go a bit a different way, or to actually go forward with it. And what now happens, only at that point you really have to go into your big prioritization and budgeting discussions. And that gets so much easier if you have like a bit of evidence. Because right now you probably can put a price tag on it and say how valuable it is. And it's not like all that guesswork anymore. So that's a little bit about product. But what can you do tomorrow to actually get started?
So we always like to leave people with stuff when they leave here that you can go in tomorrow and do. Everything we're going to show you is free. It's free. Like this. This is called getting a group of people to stand around loads of Post-its. It's free. One of the things we talk a lot about is principle of mission. Now, people are maybe familiar with, when I talk about high-performance teams, they go, I know what's a high-performance team. It's the army. The army are really high performance, and they use command and control. So what are you talking about? And I go, well, that's interesting, because the army abandoned command and control after the Napoleonic War in the 18th century. And we're still playing with the 19th century in our world. What armies actually talk about is commander's intent. I'm going to try and say Avstrav Taktika. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I'll try all the time. But this is the idea of what are the key outcome that we're trying to achieve. What is the thing, the goal that the team need to achieve? So the general will say, we're going to take that hill. That's what we have to do, take that hill. And the team then are in a situation of either emergent opportunity or threat. And they're trusted based on the skills they have, the training they have, the knowledge they have, to make the best decision that is aligned to achieving that outcome of taking the hill. That's how you get alignment at scale. You clarify purpose, the mission, the principle of mission. And what I do then is get executives to do this, that they set these areas up for development teams, mission command, where they clearly articulate the purpose of that team, what they are trying to achieve. And then you can start to do techniques like impact mapping to map out how you might achieve that outcome as a group, as a team, and share some context around that. And then pick an idea and go and test it to see if it achieves it. This doesn't happen once a year. This happens every week. This doesn't last for 3 months building PowerPoints. It lasts for 30 minutes. You share context, you learn at speed, and then you move forward to your next iteration. Principle of mission. You can start tomorrow. It's free.
For me, the key to all these things is not being afraid. So reducing that learning anxiety is a big thing. And that's something you can start very small as well. Like, do go and try out something like that. Set up a wall. Do an impact map. Do a little experiment in your team. Look for something small where it doesn't hurt. But the most important thing is, like in every company, there are teams that are experimenting. There are teams that are trying. So the important stuff to get that learning anxiety down is to talk about it. So whenever you try something out, no matter if it worked or if it did not work, go tell your colleagues, talk to each other so they can see that they can try things without it hurting.
So how do you create a place where you can try things without hurting? And this is why we talk about safe to fail experiments. When you take too big a risk, it's too big to fail. If you've spent 100 million, 100 people, and 2 years, it's too big to fail. You keep running. The trick is when you run experiments is to make them small, to set boundaries around them of either time, scope, investment, to create small feedback loops. So instead of asking for 100 people, 100 million in 100 months, ask for one person, one week, and $1 to test something out and see if it works. And if it does work, then invest more. Invest €2 and start to double down, because if it fails, you can recover from that. And this is exactly how financial people run their investment portfolios. They don't take their life savings and put it all on one bet and hope it pays off. They take a portion of their savings. They bet across the market. They pay to learn information. They see how the market adapts. They limit their losses and then double down on the things that work. That's how financial services people make their money. It's optionality. But they reduce the risk by setting boundaries of their investment. Just like when you run your experiment, set a boundary. Set one that you're comfortable with. Thank you very much. Okay, so we can take a couple of questions. What I might do is Maybe if I have a volunteer in the audience who could carry a mic around to people to ask a question, and then me and Laura can share another one to answer it. Is that okay? Yeah? Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so who's going to embrace learning anxiety and ask the first question? Down the back. Hey.
Hi. So I'm actually just coming out of a company, a big American tech company that is supposed to know all these things. And they kind of do, because they set up kind of small teams or diverse teams, like more or less textbook thing. The problem, however, is that, and I see that quite often, that these things are only implemented on the production level. So you have that in product development or anything tech related. But the problem is, management doesn't really understand that goal setting also works differently. So how do you think, especially in the enterprise where there are no easy solutions for that matter, because you talked about the goals are supposed to lead the way, but if the goals are set in a 3-month cycle and you don't find a solution in 3 months and then suddenly the goal changes or pressure is up, then you just exchange the budget discussion to a goals discussion basically, but you're back in the same pitching situation where you're constantly under pressure. Yep. So my question is, how do you take this lean approach to the entire levels of the organization, not just into the product, product department or the product aspect?
You already jumped to your favorite slide.
Yeah, I love this slide. Hang on, I've got to sort of lean in here on for Laura because hang on, there we go. Now we can spin around. I'm sorry, you're behind the wall now. Hang on, I need to see your face when I answer the question. Thank you.
Which way do you move?
Okay, so this is one of the reasons, first of all, so this is what it looks like. This is the world of strategic deployment. That's what it's called, or Hoshin Kari in Toyota world, or Lean world. The idea is that you're constantly, the role of leadership is always to set direction. Absolutely, that is their job. What is the direction of their company? That's what they're paid to do, that's what they're good at. Their role is not, though, to tell you how to achieve that. That's the role of the team, the people who are in charge of trying to figure out how to solve that problem. Now, what typically happens is those feedback loops in product development obviously move a bit faster, but the same principle applies to your entire organization, is if we want to go into a new market, if we want to do something fundamentally different about our business model, somebody has to set that strategy. That's the leadership. And then the only way they can find out if that business hypothesis is true is they have to exercise a piece of work. They have to build something and test it. Now, a product in the context of a large organization is essentially an organizational experiment. So if your feedback cycles on that are long and aren't fast and aren't collaborative, they fail. And this is why the improvement kata method is so important, because this is the very simplest expression of an experiment that we know. Somebody has to set a direction about what we're trying to do. We're going to be the biggest car business in the world. We're going to put rockets on Mars. Somebody has to set that direction. And they also have to know where they are. The teams have to know where they are. And then set the next target about what they're going to try to achieve. So we want to go to the moon. That's the direction. Is the first target to get to the moon? The first target condition, should it be to get to the moon? It's too big. It should be, can we get the rocket to take off? How would we solve that first problem? And let's devise an experiment essentially to do that. And that's what starts to drive you in this idea of moving towards a greater goal. The vision is further up out of the picture, but you're building these iterative loops to try and get there. Now, when you are working in highly, highly, highly complex domains where you have absolutely no understanding about how a product or potentially work, this is like new product development day to day, you need to be doing this at a very, very high frequency. You need to be iterating really, really fast because you need to learn really fast. If you are trying to build a new product that has you've never had the customer before, you've never been in the market before, you've never done the product before, and you can iterate on a yearly basis, does that feel right? You talk to a startup founder, they iterate their products multiple times a day because they know they're trying to find a business model that works really fast. And the same is true of organizations. It's the same principle. You're just applying it to a larger group of people. That's why the purpose is so important that you clarify that. So all the people in the company can iterate fast, and then that you meet together. Sorry? And you share what you're learning. The teams share the outcomes they're achieving from executing the work with the leadership, so they can reevaluate that vision. They can reevaluate that direction and make another decision. And that's the principle. It's called Hoshinkari. Yay.
I've got a question concerning the budgeting process. I really enjoyed your critique of the yearly planning exercise. It might be an improvement on the old Soviet 5-year plans, but there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of improvement. But what I'm interested in some organizations, this form of budgeting process is almost mandated because they're listed on the stock exchange, and shareholders, regulators want to have some projection of sales, revenues, and projected costs on the other hand. So I'd be interested to find out how you sort of go about sort of doing this more agile budgeting within those constraints, and how you actually sort of address those conversations with finance people who are quite used to this way of working and think they need to plan things down to the last PC you're going to buy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think in some respects, there's nothing wrong with the actual controls of understanding something to work towards. The biggest challenge is actually the frequency about which it happens, but also the methods that are applied to make that happen. Now, you might notice from the last slide, I still talked about current condition and target condition. Still use the word target, you're still moving towards things. Now, when you're in a fairly large organization, which are generally publicly listed, your business model is fairly well understood. You have a lot of data about it. You have some element of understanding. You should be able to make relative predictions about what's going to happen. You think about to apply that to an agile software team. An agile software team that's on iteration 558 probably has a lot of data that they have a good sense of what happened in the last 558 iterations that might happen tomorrow. Similarly, when you're in a publicly listed company, they've been around for a while. They have a lot of data about their business model. They can still make those projections in some variance. That's totally fine. The problem is that the way people interpret targets, because they're often tied to bonuses, to pay relations, to some sort of reward scheme, is that they focus on just hitting the target, not trying to deliver great things to their customers or trying to improve their business. They make short-term decisions based on hitting the target, not long-term decisions that are aligned to achieving the company's vision. And that's the price you pay if you want to play that game of, because remember, most executives in a publicly listed company will have stock in the company, so their goal is to optimize the price of that stock. It's not necessarily to drive it forward. Now, a good example of why some founders don't want to go, and you'll notice a lot of the startups are not publicly listed. I don't know if anyone's noticed this pattern, but can anyone remember the last startup that went for an IPO in the last 3 years? Think of one. Think of one unicorn you know that's gone for an IPO. Sorry?
Hotspot.
Hotspot? Okay, cool. Etsy comes to mind for me. But it's not like I have a list of 10, right? They're all private. Why? Because they don't have to tell the market what they're doing. Elon Musk has fundamentally said he will never, in essence, he's never said he would never, but he's not taking SpaceX publicly listed, because then he has to deal with more stakeholders about what he's doing. He wants to move fast. He wants to be in control of what he's doing. So I think it's just understanding the balance of those models. The problem is, it's because you're set up in these ideas of if I'm on time, I'm on budget, I'm on scope, which are all efficiency measures, I get a bonus. It doesn't talk about customer outcomes. It doesn't talk about the business growing. It doesn't talk about, so that's why I think the problem is, and that's where it needs to change. And I think Statoil are a really great example of a company that are really embracing these techniques. That I'd encourage you. Beyond Budgeting is a book by B.R.T. Borges, who's leading the people about trying to change the way budgeting cycles work. I'd highly recommend his work. We'll give someone a free beer if they ask a question. Well, ask Laura a question. Her answers are like so much better. Seriously, I've seen her in action. She's amazing.
They're shorter.
Yeah, they're shorter. They are, yeah. That's better.
There's some.
I had a question. Do you think, I mean, that's most about methodologies. Do you think that this methodology works without change in the mind? If, like from upside down, I just use this methodology because I've heard it works really well with like high performance in companies and or there are high performance in companies outside. And so I just want to adapt, but in reality there is no trust and like I don't change my mind, I just change the way or the structure of my organization.
That comes a little bit back to the whole culture and behavior thing, because what that methodology gives you is like doing something that then shows you that it's worth changing your mind. Because that the whole methodology is a lot about show, don't tell. Like that methodology lets you experience something that you couldn't comprehend before you actually did it. And then you did it and you see the change, and then the shift in your mind only starts.
See, shorter answers, more succinct.
You want to answer that as well, so we have another?
No, I think I don't need. Okay. Any more? One more? Yeah.
Thank you, thank you for the talk. So you always go for the assumption that the people want to embrace mastery and want to improve themselves. What if this doesn't work? So what if the people in the organization do not want to improve and just want to stick with their technology, with their habits, with their processes? So how can we deal with that?
I would ask the question why they want to stay, why they not want to go out there. And because in my experience, a lot comes down to fear, because that change looks like I might be losing my job, or I need, like, of course, like that permanent adaptation and change is stressful. It means moving out of your comfort zone. But that comes back to that experiencing. Like once you have moved out, you see the benefits of it. And a lot of those processes have to do with collaboration and actually handling things as a team, which actually in the end, once you're in there, takes a lot of pressure off, because you're never responsible as an individual being for anything anymore. Makes it a very relaxing thing to do. But to get there is hard work, and you have to step out of your comfort zone.
So can you recommend a trigger to maybe get them really out of the comfort zone? Even like maybe for projects that are really not that critical and where there are not so many high stakes involved, and they don't even want to change for those kind of projects?
It has a lot, like it's hard to tell, like, or give a general answer, but I would recommend like looking for that first step as an experiment again. Like Barry on one of the last slides is talking about like setting up a safe space for an experiment. Thank you. And that's really the idea, like especially if you're saying that's a project that might not be high risk, like think about like what could that very first step be, but that really depends on the individual situation.
Yeah.
Any good ideas?
No, I think it's just also worth recognizing you have to meet people where they're at. Spin around. Thank you. Like, you know, some people, are people familiar with like a technology adoption curve? You know, like you've early adopters or early majority. Like people are exactly the same on organizational change charts. Some people just like, hey, it's the new technology, I'm using it. Hey, have you seen my iPhone? Hey, have you seen my watch? Right? You know those people. And there's the other end who are just like, no, I just like what I'm doing. No, I still have a bank account. All these people, right? Like, and it's sort of like if you put someone who is change adverse into a highly change environment, you break the person every time. So I think you have to understand where people are at and give them the push just to the next thing, not to the too far, just the next thing. That's it. Okay. So I think, oh, one more. Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Frank. Yeah. Frank's.
So, first of all, thank you for citing German military history.
Thank you. I nearly did it. Was my Australopithecus? Was that? Is that? Oh, sorry. Thank you. I practiced that for ages, so I never get it right.
I've been for 20 years in a business career, and I always shied away from citing any German military history.
Oh, sure.
Because it always made me strange. Looks very strange to my German compatriots.
Oh, sorry. I apologize if that offended you.
No, but I just wondered, how did you come up with this stuff? You got like a crossover of automotive production theory, organization theory, change management, technology, IT stuff really. And I just wondered, what are these three guys who come up with this crossover theory from taking the best of?
No, that's a great question actually. Thanks very much, Frank. So I think I think about innovation in a really interesting way, right? None of these ideas are new. They're not new. You just recombine them in a different way, and that creates something new. So a simple example is, say, with Uber. What have they created new? Maybe not a lot. They've just made payment easy, put Google Maps on something, and created an order delivery system, and they've brought them together, and it's created something new. And like that's what a lot of these things are about, right? That's why you'll find, like I like learning, so I like reading about economics, I like reading about technology, I like reading it. And you pull all these things together and get inspiration and come up with something new. And so this is why you'll hear everyone, there's nothing new here. And I'm like, you're right, there's not. It's just, we've just plugged them together in a different way. And we had the pleasure today of spending some time with Jaeger, the manufacturing for healthcare. And I got to hang out with them and talk about, do people know what continuous integration is? Or test-driven development? Like trying to bake quality into your constantly testing. And I was talking to them about how we did it in software. And then they were taking me down to their testing labs and showing me how they do drop tests, like dropping the product to make sure if it breaks, or putting it in a shaking environment to see if it doesn't blow up, or doing, this was the coolest, electromagnetic tests. So like firing electromagnetic electricity at a device to see if it blows up. And this is how they build a product, right? To test and build quality in as they go. So I was just having the time of my life, right? Because they're doing the same thing, right? They focus on quality. They know quality drives great products. They know great products drives customer demand. They know these things, and they're testing as they go. Just like in software, we write test-driven development because we're testing our code as we go. We want high quality because that's good. So it's taking inspiration and seeing what other people are doing and then trying to apply it back in your domain. That's how we go. So it's a really great question. Thank you. Okay, I think it's time for, is it too early for an ab soccer? Or? All right, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming.